For a while, private equity was an obvious area. The firm was very strong in private equity in the States. The clients were becoming global. The clients were moving into Europe. So there was an obvious nexus to pursue. And I guess the great thing about private equity is that it then, to do private equity, you need deal lawyers, you need finance lawyers, you need tax, you need antitrust, you need IP, employing, you need the whole range of a law firm. But I think the aim was always not to, scale up like a big UK law firm, but to scale up to match the clients. So it wasn't really a build it and they will come. It's more they're here, we'll build around what's here.
This is a very special one for me. Many of you will know for a very short period of time, I was a trainee at the US law firm in London called Weil.
Short but memorable.
Yes, short but memorable. And back in the day, we had, well, the managing partner at the time was Mike Francies, who has only just retired as of the end of last year. Now, Mike was the managing partner for over 2 decades at Weil. First of all, thank you so much for coming into the podcast, Mike.
Pleasure.
Okay, I just want to start. Really, what I'm trying to do with this podcast is better understand what the role of a managing partner actually is. My first question for you is, how does someone become a managing partner at a firm like Weil? And what happened that led you to stay for such a long period of time?
I think, you know, different firms have different processes and procedures. If you look at Weil, the process is essentially that the management committee of the firm choose the heads of practice areas, the managing partners of offices, and essentially you stay at their discretion. Really, they can either ask you to leave or appoint co-heads if they think an extra sort of views or extra spectrum is needed, until you reach, as I did, mandatory retirement age. Other firms have very different, they have terms, so you can only do, say, a 5-year term or 2 5-year terms, and in some cases, elections. But I think most firms, you say a firm like Weil, I mean, I would say there's no firm like Weil,
Hmm.
but I'd say most of sort of the big US, New York headquartered firms or New York major office firms probably do something pretty similar, where an executive committee or a management committee, or maybe even the chairman of the firm will choose who runs an office or a practice area.
Perfect. And I'm curious to know, what does a managing partner do on a day-to-day basis? I guess, especially as opposed to, say, a typical partner or someone that is head of a practice area. What's the distinction there as a managing partner?
I think again, different firms have different roles. Some firms have a managing partner and a senior partner.
Hmm.
Some firms have two or three managing partners who do different things. If you look at my role at Weil, um, we, other than the person who runs the firm and the general counsel of the firm, we expect all partners to be full-time or full-on fee earners and working with clients on client matters. So management is I guess in your spare time. To be fair, as the role as the office gets bigger and more complex, that it's so, more, maybe more time is spent up in management. But a partnership is a funny animal. So if you look at a managing partner, it's not like being a CEO or a managing director of a business where you have a corporate structure.
Hmm.
So a lot of the job, it's not really, I'd say, a day-to-day running job. There are, business services people who do that. If you look at Weil, Fiona Haig, is for all the time I've been managing partner, has essentially run the office day to day as chief operating officer in London. Um, so it's more making sure, dealing with strategy, dealing with relationships around the firm, dealing with recruitment, sometimes whatever the opposite of recruitment is, termination.
Hmm.
Uh, and then there are very, if you look at the important parts of the year, obviously the budget and business plan is an important one. The managing partner leads that, but the heads of practice areas and the partners have an important role, because you can't just impose strategy on people. Making new partners is probably the most important thing the partnership does. Internal candidates incredibly important, but lateral hires are now pretty common in the market, so that's important. Making sure people are going to fit into your culture and your strategy and your plans. Salaries, part of the conversation is obviously important to partners, but also lawyer compensation, business services secretaries. And then project, like while, I'm not involved in it, obviously, but there's obviously a project looking at when out the lease runs out in London, how that is handled. Should the firm move to, the firm is about to move part of the offices into a new building towards the end of the year. Um, I think the great thing about the job is it's sort of different every day.
Mhm.
And every day a different partner comes to you with something different they want to talk about. So you don't get bored.
Great. And you mentioned the strategy. I think I guess I know more about that in the context of trying to run a business as opposed to what does strategy mean for a firm. And I guess if I imagine back when you were starting as well as a managing partner, it's very different to the firm it is today. How did you think about, okay, how are we going to compete, for example, with London-based law firms? How are we going to scale? What was the kind of thinking behind planning the strategy for Weil?
A long time ago, but in general, the strategy was look at what the firm is good at,
Mhm,
look at what clients the firm has that are doing work in your outside the US in London in Europe and see what we need to be able to service those clients and win work for them. It wasn't to compete with the big UK firms at every level because we didn't want to be that size and that scope.
mhm,
It was to pick areas where clients made sense and the skills of the people you had in the office made sense. So for a while, private equity was an obvious area. The firm was very strong in private equity in the States. The clients were becoming global. The clients were moving into Europe. So there was an obvious nexus to pursue. And I guess the great thing about private equity is that it then, to do private equity, you need deal lawyers, you need finance lawyers, you need tax, you need antitrust, you need IP, employee, you need the whole range of a law firm. But I think the aim was always not to, scale up like a big UK law firm, but to scale up to match the clients.
mhm.
So it wasn't really a build it and they will come. It's more they're here, we'll build around what's here.
Got it.
I mean,
And
law is a relatively straightforward business. You need to be a really good lawyer. You need to work hard. You need to think about the clients all the time and how you solve their problems. So you need to get people who think like that and want to work together, and then convince the clients.
great. I guess, and you can kind of tell me my thinking is wrong here, but what I imagine it is, at least from my side as someone junior, I can see there are many firms that are at least present themselves as good at private equity. Um, I'm kind of curious to know how does that work? Like, how do you position yourself as if I'm a private equity client, I should choose Weil as opposed to other firms? Is that like a specific thing that you think about, and how does that positioning work?
So I think firstly, if you look at Weil or some of the firms we would regard as peers, you have a certain number of private equity clients, hopefully global around the firm, partners who look after them, and the aim is to maximize those.
Hmm.
You to look after those to make sure you get, I guess, more than your fair share of the work they're giving out. So you have to have good partners, you get on with people and understand that. But the other thing you have to do is, I think, remember it's about the clients. It's not about you. You need to work out what they want. You need to sell them what they want, and they need to get on with you. And like, so you need to build connections at all levels. Then if you have a core of a business, essentially that's your selling point to other people. You either come across other funds. The best selling point is, they see you do a good job and think, wow, that's great. Our lawyers aren't doing as good a job as that. Or someone leaves a fund and joins another one. And they think, you were so good for my past firm. I want to use you at my new one. Or, funds to co-invest, they do deals together.
Hmm.
So I think you've got to show you're ahead of the market and you know the market, but also you've got to use the data. If you've done 5 or 6 deals in a certain area, that's a good reason to look at what funds are also doing in that deals areas and sort of sell your expertise. I think it's a bit different. There's so much recruitment in private equity, whereas, when I first started, it was quite new people doing private equity. Now, I expect there isn't a firm that hasn't got a private equity group and hasn't recruited a, you know, private equity person or team. So it's much more competitive. Yeah, much more separated out. But part of it is market. People like to go, they like to have lawyers who obviously know what they're doing, but also lawyers they like and people who know the market. They don't want to feel that, you're reinventing the wheel for them every time. So you need to make sure, you have the expertise and you don't just have the expertise in one person. It's being shared around the firm and all the lawyers.
Hmm.
We always made a big thing about, what happens in the US in private equity then comes to Europe, which is sort of true still to an extent. But that's only a big thing if you actually know what happens in the US, not if you just go along and say, hey, we're, London office of a US firm. So you've got to work at it.
Hmm. And if I just stick with this point, I guess I imagine at other firms, the lawyers are, also very responsive, also do good
Miller.
work, also good speakers. I guess what's the distinction there then? Presumably it's not then cost, like you're not fighting, or maybe you
No,
are. Yeah.
we and firms that we'd regard as our peers don't compete on cost.
Hmm.
What I guess what we compete on is essentially convincing clients you understand them better, you have more market knowledge, coming up with ideas on things, and frankly, doing a great job on deals. I think, yeah, there's I think somewhere you talked about scaling. There is a scaling element that you need to be careful as you scale and you get more successful, that you're still maintaining, the level of service
Hmm.
rather than dumbing down. I think you need, you have a lot, shop windows of clients. Whenever you're doing a deal, whenever you're having a lunch, whenever you're having a coffee or breakfast, yeah, that is a shop window to impress them, and you've got to make sure you do that every time. You've got to be on your game.
Yeah. Um, that's a perfect segue to what I want to ask, which is so I'm personally just experiencing this now, which is trying to understand how do you build relationships with other businesses, other firms. You seem like someone that has learned a lot about how to build relationships with clients, as you said, breakfast lunches. Um, I guess I don't know how to ask this question in a less obvious way, but what is it that you do to build those relationships with private equity clients?
Oh, I think all people do different things. Yeah, I think first you've got to remember you've got to pick realistic targets, and you've got to remember it's long term. You don't meet someone and you don't come away with a bit of work and think that was a waste of time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Move on to the next one. It's a long term game. Well, as you said before, there are lots of law firms. There are lots of great lawyers
Yeah.
at those law firms. You can't expect someone to say, "Oh wow, you're incredible. I'm going to move all my work immediately. Where do I send it?" So, but I think what you've got to do is have something to say
Hmm.
that isn't just, "Hey, Weil is great. This firm's great. That I'm great." It's this is why it makes sense for you. It's got to be about the client.
Yeah.
I think I guess you got to do what comes naturally to you. Different people develop businesses in different ways. Different clients need a different approach. Some clients are so big, have so many different areas. You've got to use a wide team. Some clients, there's a few very key people that you need to build very close relationships. So you've got to know your client, know your firm, and know yourself. And people use the concept about being authentic in a different concept, but you've got to be authentic in business development. There's no good in pretending
Hmm.
to be something you're not. And I think being honest, if you're not the right person or firm for something, say don't. The worst thing is doing a bad job
Hmm.
or being average, as opposed to, you're better off doing a great job on three things and passing on the fourth than doing a great job on three things and being mediocre on the fourth.
Great. That makes sense. In terms of so going back to this point about growing or strategy or what happens as a managing partner, um, how do you think about financial metrics? If that is something that the managing partner in the London office does, I guess very simply for me, it's okay, revenue, profit, how many new clients are we bringing in? Are we retaining existing clients? Is that the same for you as a managing partner, or do you look at different metrics there?
I think different firms look at in different ways. Some firms have client metrics mainly. Some firms have individual partner metrics. Some firms like Weil have office metrics and practice group metrics as well as firm metrics. So, but I think in general, it all starts with productivity.
Hmm.
how busy are your people? If you look at the metrics and your people are very busy, the rest follow. Revenues are obviously very important because there's no point in being very busy if you're not turning it into cash. And then obviously, realization rates are are you actually, you're issuing bills? Are you actually collecting the money? You're doing, and so I think, I don't, and I'd probably be shocked for this by a lot of law firms. I'm not sure law firm metrics are particularly complex compared to other businesses. We don't look at millions of KPIs.
Hmm.
You do tend to look at clients, obviously, which are the big clients where, historically, if you've done a certain amount of work for one client and you're not, why, what you can do about it. If you're some doing a lot more work for a client, other lessons to learn you can apply to other clients. Um, and I guess, where the work is being done. If you have a client that is in 5 countries and you're working in three, the other two are opportunity.
Hmm.
If you don't do tax or antitrust, that's an opportunity. So I think the metrics at one level are pretty high level. How busy are your lawyers? How are you turning that into cash? And drilling down to individual practices, individual lawyers. At another level, are very client specific.
Yeah. Would you set targets for practice area heads? Is that like you need to get X amount of clients or revenue? Is that something
No,
you
they
do?
did. No, while we don't do that, we believe
Hmm.
that the clients are firm clients, and the point should be building up, institutionalizing them and building them across the firm. But we do have budgets. Obviously we measure financial performance, and so we know where practice areas are above or below budget. But those budgets are really based on, I guess, precedent and what people think the market's going to do.
I want to turn to managing people, and I don't know what that was like a while, but I imagine partners can be very different. Some have big personalities. Um, how do you manage people of that level of seniority that obviously have a lot of experience, but have them rallying around the same goal?
I think you have to remember that law firms and maybe Weil is operates differently to others. I don't know. Law firms are partnerships. Partners aren't necessarily all equal, but they're all partners and owners of operating owners of the business as opposed to passive shareholders.
Hmm.
Um, and partners are individuals. So your job is I think a while we have what we call light touch management. Your job is not to tell partners what to do, is to facilitate a culture and organization services so they can do the best they can do in terms of servicing clients and developing business and developing themselves. So, um, strong personality, yes, there are, lawyers, people who become lawyers tend not to be, bashful and shy.
Hmm.
They have strong personalities, but that's good actually. What you've got to make sure is they're channeled in a way that benefits everyone. So a lot of it is just talking to people. Sometimes people just want to come and vent to something. Some obviously there are times when you have to be a bit firmer because something is unacceptable. But in general, it's communication. I'd say communication is key.
And at the start, you mentioned the lateral hiring. Um, I imagine that is something that's probably changed a lot these days compared to when you started. But I'm curious to know, say you see a lawyer at a different firm that you want to bring over to Weil, you think is really good. What does that look like behind the scenes? Is it how do you attract star partners from other firms or star lawyers to bring them over to Weil?
I think in general, to get the top people, there has to be sometimes there's a push factor. There's something they're unhappy at with their current firm, but there has to be a pull factor as well.
Hmm.
There has to be something about Weil, something about what you're offering them that they like. And usually that's a strategy they believe in and where they can see they have a key role in it or an ability to grow if they're more junior. So I think it's about showing them that where they'll fit in and convincing them it's a good place to work.
And how important is, it's somewhat obvious, but how important is pay to that conversation?
Um, what's the saying? It's never about the money, but it's always about the money. So
Hmm.
I personally don't think, I think pay is important. Obviously, no
Yeah.
one moves for less money.
Hmm.
Um, but I actually think pay is sort of overrated. Most good people are paid well and looked after their current firm. You're unlikely to be paying someone so much more that it's like there's no choice.
Yeah.
Um, so, and if you look at it the other way around, when firms are setting partner comp, they're setting it their top partners at levels where they don't want other firms to come and be able to offer so much more. So, I think pay, in my view, is the last part of the question. People tend to move because they believe that the move will be good for them.
Hmm.
And maybe they think good for them. They're thinking long term, I'll get more and more money each year because I'll do really well. But people don't, I think most lawyers tend not, there might be some that tend not to think, oh, well, I'll get a lot of money for 2 or 3 years and I don't really want to be here, but, then I'll move somewhere I want to be afterwards. They tend to think, I want a long term career. Is this going to be good for it? And then, okay, it is. Am I being paid properly?
Hmm. And I guess this is also relevant due to at least from the side I see it, is all the press over newly qualified salaries. I remember when I was briefly a trainee, just I was shocked at what Weil was already paying, but it's remarkable how much that has gone up since. I'd love just your take on where do you see that going? Presumably, firms can't just keep increasing salaries indefinitely. There's got to be a point at which it stops, but also maybe not. Maybe it is just you've got to match every other firm in the market. Where do you see that?
Well, if you're a certain level of firm, you've got to be paying at the same or thereabouts level as your peers. Otherwise, the junior level, if you're just starting up, why would you go for a lot less when you actually don't know much about any of the firms anyway?
Yeah.
And I also think if you're expecting your people to work as hard to have the same quality, why would they want to work somewhere where you're expecting all the same things and earn less? I don't know. I've no idea, to be honest, where it can go or how it goes, but I think you need to look at the other end. As firms carry on growing and getting more profitable, they'll need better and better people at every level, from trainees, solicitor apprentices, newly qualified, people coming out to counsel and partners. And therefore, um, if they're generating those profits to get the best people, there'll always be firms that, you know, pay a special bonus, issue a bit more. And I guess if a firm is really, really busy, it actually seems fair that I guess some partners like it all to be paid with them, but it shouldn't be shared around a bit.
Hmm. Very fair. When it comes to attracting people at a junior stage, I'm kind of curious to know how you see Wile's like marketing on that side. What's the right kind of person to join Weil? Or how do you think about branding Weil London to the wider market?
I guess, and probably most law firms are the same. You want people who are going to fit in culturally,
Mhm.
who are going to work hard, who are going to be keen to learn and sort of get on with it. People who are going to fit into what you're doing and grow as you grow.
Mhm.
I think in terms of branding to recruit, graduates, solicitor apprentices, junior lawyers, I think it's very much about you'll get the right training, you'll get the right opportunities, you'll get responsibility, you'll work with people you like, you'll get client contact. I think, and I'm sure every firm says the same, but I guess it's convincing people is true.
Very fair. Um, I was like hesitant to ask this question, but I am genuinely curious to know your take. AI and all the hype around it. Do you see this as, is it a fad? Is it like a marketing thing? Is it actually going to change what lawyers do? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I wouldn't claim to be an expert in any shape. I'm about halfway through Richard Susskind's book and have to keep going
Sure.
back, reading the last chapter because I've already realized I didn't understand it. So I'm not probably not the right person. I think AI is going to change, is changing everything
Okay.
gradually,
Yep.
and it will change law. I don't think it will necessarily change law. That suddenly you'll need, tenth as many lawyers. But I don't know. But I think it will just make things, more efficient. You'll do something in a different way. I expect more things will get commoditized. But a lot of things are still done very inefficiently in law. Lots of junior lawyers bundling up documents, photocopying documents. Look at some litigation bundles and things like that, not on a litigator. So I suspect AI will um, take over a lot of tasks, not in every business, but I expect it's not going to be a smoking gun tipping point. I think it'll just be a gradual osmosis. But I wouldn't necessarily claim my advice is sound on that area.
Me neither. Um, Looking back at your time at Weil, would you do it again? And what would you do differently, if anything?
Um, I guess I'm not a great believer in looking back. I sort of think unless you can get in a time machine, there's not much you can do about it. And if you
Mhm.
look back and say, "Oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done this," um, you could just be unhappy because you'll find 100 things every day you wish you'd done differently.
Mhm.
So I guess what would I have done something differently? I, I'm not. There are clearly things that could have been done better. We could have recruited more quickly at some stages. We could uh, have maybe realized some partners we didn't want to leave or unhappy and dealt with that. But on the overall scale of things, I'm not, as I said, I'm not really a great believer in recriminations. Um, I guess no, I think I'm not sure. If I'd be making it up, frankly, if I thought
Of
of
course.
something that's not something I think about.
Yeah.
The answer is, I'm sure if you spoke to my partners, they would tell you 100 things I could have done differently and better,
Fair
and they'd
enough.
probably be right.
Yeah. Okay, last question, which has just then come to mind. I imagine you have worked a lot throughout your career, obviously being a managing partner and a private equity lawyer. Um, how is it now being retired and having presumably more free time?
Um, I do have more free time. I've actually been on holiday twice already this year, so that's quite nice.
Amazing.
I've caught up with a lot of people I haven't seen for a long time. I guess I don't really regard myself as retired.
Hmm.
I more regard myself as sort of resting while I work out what the next chapter is. I sort of feel I'm like too young and energetic to retire.
I love that.
So, I've retired from a while, but not from working and initiatives. And there are a lot of things, I mentor a lot of people, partners, associates, and other people, people in charities and organizations, and getting more involved in, some of the initiatives that, like, social mobility, 93% club, things I think are very important. So, I've got enough to keep me going, but I will be and am thinking of what to do next that is more. But there is other than the fact I think my wife wants me out of the house more. There's no real urgency.
Yeah, well, I hope you take a break first. That's all I had just to say. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate how approachable you've been throughout all of this. And it's really nice to, I guess for me, that's a lot more junior in my career journey, just how approachable you've been throughout all of this. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to see you doing so well. Thank you.